positive effervescence is being felt throughout the national territory with less than 4 days to the official kickoff of the African Nations Championship. John Paul Sama in this newscast tells us what Martin Tungu Pillay has reserved for the tactical and desired results Cameroonians anticipate as he profiles Jacques Zoua alongside his teammates set to mark their presence and defend the country's national colors come weekend. We shall be bringing to you details of the presentation of that team in this newscast, and also the 2021 financial budget has been spelled out today, January 12, 2020, at the governor's office in the littoral region here in Douala, which stands out at more than 82 billion CFA francs. And those are our top stories. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining this 6 p.m. newscast on Spectrum Television. I am Josephine Bindzi. As announced in the headlines, the budget for the 2021 financial year has been launched today, January 12, 2021, at the governor's office here in the economic capital, Douala. The budget, which stands at more than 82 billion CFA francs, is geared towards encouraging local production and fostering decentralization, amongst others. Oni Ladonet in attendance tells us more.
Out of the global 4,865.2 billion CFA francs state budget, the financial package of the littoral region for the fiscal year 2021 stands at more than 82 billion CFA francs. This budget will be executed in an atmosphere of uncertainty caused by the existing COVID-19 virus. In regards to this budget, it is worth noting that it will be executed in an uncertain atmosphere. That's why the government has to be prudent in the choice of spending for this 2021 budget. This has been in a ceremony launched today, January 12, at the governor's office, aimed at launching the budget for the 2021 financial year. The execution of this budget comes in with new innovations aimed at boosting the economy.
We will talk about the suppression of some bottlenecks in the fiscal administration. For example, suspending the use of physical receipts. Now, revenue has to be collected through the banks. I think that is a very good innovation that will help our country to collect more revenue, because we are in need of this revenue. Concerning the customs administration, like my boss just said, we want to encourage the production of local. We want to encourage local production. We don't want to depend on importing. I think that too is a very good innovation.
The decentralization process is also another important aspect considered.
Like you just said, decentralization. They just created the regional council, and so it's one of the areas that the government is laying more emphasis, or council is laying emphasis on decentralization, taking the administration to the people. And so we notice that the recent election of a regional council, it's going a long way to kind of like meet the objectives of the President of the Republic.
The launch of the 2021 budget, which comes few days after the regional election, was an avenue for the governor of the littoral region, Samuel Dieudonné Ivaha Dibois, to caution actors involved in its execution to observe budgetary discipline.
And we now take you to the Douala 5 municipality as a vehicle running at high speed with occupants visibly drunk has lost control and ended up exploding in a building at Bonabo neighborhood in the Douala 5 municipality. It burnt down a house to ashes, although no human lives were lost. A lot of material damages were also recorded in the early hours of the morning. Crystal Asexwele has details in the following report.
This is the remains of a building in the Douala 5 municipality that has been brought down to ashes by a vehicle running at breakneck speed with 4 visibly drunk young men on board, which ended up in an explosion. The owner of the house, who was already asleep at the time of the incident, was whisked out by his neighbors who heard the violent sound caused by the explosion and came out to his rescue. I was carried out from my house and put out by my neighbors. I was unconscious. It was after 30 minutes that I regained consciousness and discovered that a vehicle had lost control and hit my room, where I sleep. Lucky enough, I was sleeping on my stomach, so the wall came down on me when the car crashed and caught fire. Other neighbors living around were equally affected by this incident. All my stuff is burned down. All the fuel and engine oil I was selling is gone. I couldn't save anything in my house because I was concerned about human lives. I went to the rescue of the victims instead. I had 5 boxes here and all of them have been burnt down to ashes. It was my daughter who just got married who had the boxes. Everything is burnt. This incident occurred in the early hours of today, January 12, 2021, at the Bonabo neighborhood. Although no human lives were lost in this incident, a lot of material damages were recorded as the vehicle in question was reduced to ashes.
On to this brief, Sébastien Nadeau, member of the French National Assembly, has in an open letter to the French government and European authorities appreciated the French government in condemning the current Mautu massacre of the 10th of January 2021, as well as former Ngabu and Kumba massacres that claimed the lives of many Cameroonians. He also shone the spotlight on the bipartisan resolution adopted by the U.S. Senate on the 1st of January, calling on the government of Cameroon and separatist fighters to end all forms of violence and come to dialogue so that the socio-political upheavals in the northwest and southwest come to an end. And he also stressed on the need for France to stand by Cameroon in times like this. We also read this press release which calls the attention of a fake Facebook profile bearing the name of Cameroon's ambassador to France. He calls on the public opinion that this profile is fake and describes it as banditism and cyber criminality and condemns by Cameroon's legislative laws. He also calls on culprits to be brought to justice and equally calls on Cameroonians in the diaspora, especially in France, to be vigilant or visit the Cameroonian consulate in France or in Marseille. On our international page, politically motivated mob violence in Washington, D.C. has sent shockwaves throughout the U.S. as Americans continue to grapple with the assault on the U.S. Capitol and what it means for the country moving forward. Details with the VOA.
Scrolling through news websites on his home office computer, Kent Redfield, a former Illinois state government employee and retired professor, couldn't believe what he was watching unfold at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
This was an attack on the legitimacy and authority of government and the rule of law, and so it was just stunning. It really was disbelief and very difficult to get your head around.
Amid heightened security, activity at the Illinois State Capitol building in Springfield, where Redfield once worked, was noticeably quiet in the days following the riot at the U.S. Capitol. The implications of the attack increased Redfield's anxiety.
A really serious terrorist attack could have, crippled the United States government. When those sorts of things started to sink in, and the pictures of the representatives, sheltering in the galleries and stuff, it just, the gravity of it started to hit you.
Kirkwood, Illinois farmer Wendell Shawman watched the lawlessness at the U.S. Capitol unfold on his living room television.
I don't think we know the full story yet. Whether this was all Trump supporters that really stirred this up or whether there was somebody else that took advantage of the opportunity to really raise havoc and raise hell, I don't know. I think that time will tell on that, hopefully.
Recent events and President Donald Trump's role in them, including his rejection of the presidential election results, have Shawman reevaluating his support for the man he voted for in 2016 and 2020.
It's certainly gone down. I still, you can't discount what he did over the 4 years. I think the country, for a large part, is better off for it. He did not leave gracefully.
It must admit, I would worry that we're coming to the end of what I'll call democratic principles that we've understood and taken for granted for most of my life.
Longtime Illinois bookseller John Paul has a deep appreciation for history. His bookstore, Prairie Archives, is near the old Capitol building in Springfield, where in 1858, former President Abraham Lincoln delivered his famous House Divided speech. The address explored America's deep division over the wrongs of slavery ahead of the U.S. Civil War. John Paul believes Lincoln would mourn the current political divide in a union so many gave their lives to preserve.
Well, I'm reasonably convinced that he would be extremely shocked. Throughout the entire political history of the United States, we've never had issues that were like this. So,
Paul hopes a sense of national unity can be rekindled by President-elect Joe Biden, who appeared in front of Paul's bookshop when then presidential candidate Barack Obama introduced him as his running mate in 2008. Paul says much has changed during the 12 years since, and he worries about damage done to the credibility of the U.S. election process and whether Biden can effectively govern a politically fractured nation.
The extreme right wing is going to reject any sense that Biden is a legitimate president, and this is just going to make his job much more difficult in trying to convince the public that he is and that he's trying to work on their behalf. All we can hope for is that it doesn't stay the same way that it is.
Paul's hopes will be put to the test beginning January 20th, when Trump departs the White House and Biden takes the oath of office to become president. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Springfield, Illinois.
They're the people. They're the people of Baltimore. I mean, for real.
And onto our sports page, players of 9 Elite 1 club and 2 amateur sides constitute the 23-man squad called up to defend the colors of the nation in the upcoming African Nations Championship. John Paul Sama x-rays various players participating in this report that follows.
The long-awaited list of coach Martin Tungo Pile is finally out. 33 names according to the CAF prescription, with 23 selected, 10 on the waiting list. The Lions gaffers decided to feature some of the country's top stars, like PWD's safe hands Hashu Kerido, who is just from representing the club at the CAF Champions League. Adding to his experience in the Lions' den, Jacques Zoua Dugari is one of the other names that knows what a top continental competition is like, as the 2017 African Cup of Nations winner of amateur side AS Futuro will be looking to bring his know-how up front, even though he is not renowned for scoring much goals. With little goals up front from the other trio last season, the coach will be counting on the strength and compactness of his midfield and looking up to the likes of Coton Sports duo Felix Okine and Thierry Twente to solidify the middle of the pack, while counting on Orien Etamengombe's form at Bambutus, which earned him the award for the best player before moving to Garwa, to keep out any opponent from going past them, as well as Sesh Andulo, one of the only two in this team with CHAN experience. The list of players to defend the colors of the nation in a few days' time has top stars from some 9 Elite 1 outfits like Steve Roberto Kenny, Yankam Bazil, Emmanuel Kofana, Loic Asomo, amongst others. Cameroon kicks off a campaign on Saturday in the tournament opener against Zimbabwe.
CHAN series, the newsroom is measuring the strength of all pools, and today we begin with Pool D as Zambia, Guinea, Namibia and Tanzania make up the Pool D logging horns at the Limbe Centenary Stadium for the 6th edition of the African Nations Championship, scheduled to begin January 16, 2021. Oni Ladonet expounds on the strengths of all the teams in this group and our reports.
Cameroon, and it is a goal scored by
After finishing second at the pre-CHAN competition, Zambia has increasing chances of going further in the 2020 African Nations Championship starting on 16 of January 2020. Paired in Group D with Guinea and two-time participants Tanzania and Namibia, the Shipolopolos of Zambia are the favorites of this poll. The boys of Mulitin Micho Shwedoevich will be participating for the 4th time in the competition, with their debut coming in 2009, where they finished 3rd. The team later failed to qualify for the 2011 and 2014 African Nations Championship, but came back in full force at the 4th and 5th edition, reaching the quarterfinals in both editions. Guinea, on her part, will be making their 3rd ever participation in the African Nations Championship. Their best finish was in their first participation in 2016, where they ended at the 4th position. It seemed they were out of luck in 2018 as they got knocked out in the group stages. For the 2020 edition of the CHAN competition, Guinea will play against Namibia on January 19 before facing Zambia and Tanzania. For Namibia, this will be her 2nd appearance in this tournament. Their first appearance was in Morocco way back in 2018, where they were eliminated at the quarterfinals. Still in Group D, Tanzania holds the poorest record in this group at the CHAN tournament. These two-time participants made their first ever appearance in the maiden edition back in 2009, but were unable to cross the group stages. Hopefully, the boys of Coach Etienne will rewrite history this 6th edition of the African Nations Championship here in Cameroon.
And before we take leave of you, we now talk CHAN preparations as the city of Douala is gearing up as one of the host cities to the much anticipated CHAN Games. Though the atmosphere is not positive as it's supposed to be, inhabitants are expectant that the last days to the game will be much more gloomy than the days ahead. Catherine Kone has details.
Barely a week to the kick-off of the 2021 African Nations Championship CHAN, the city of Douala seems not to be dancing to the rhythm of the competition. The fanfare and euphoria that characterizes events of such magnitude appears to be totally absent. At every junction and roundabout in one of the host towns of CHAN 2021 Douala, no decor, posters, banners and even CHAN logo have been erected to indicate the recent upcoming grand event.
Non, je peux pas vous dire que la ville de Douala est une ville qui attend une compétition parce qu'il n'y a que de
I can't tell you if Douala is waiting to host the competition because there are no indications in town to show that Douala will be hosting or is even prepared to host the 2021 CHAN. We are not seeing anything to prove that we are going to host the competition here in Douala. And even in other regions in Cameroon, we don't even know the CHAN program, neither on TV or even on posters. Some Douala city dwellers are perplexed about Cameroon hosting the 2021 African Nations Championship, as nothing strikes such a competition in the town. In reality, we are not observing anything in town. For a big competition like the upcoming CHAN, there are no logo to indicate the competition will kick off soon. I'm not seeing shan competition because normally, if Cameroon is to host the competition, we would already be feeling the ambience, animation and advertisement in town. Even newspaper kiosks, taxis, bikes and buses have remained dormant to the big competition scheduled to take place on January 16, 2021. However, despite the non-visibility of the upcoming competition, it is hoped that in the days ahead, the city of Douala will take a new phase as she prepares to welcome 2 poles of the Shan and other tourists.
And that was a package for tonight's newscast. Thanks for watching. Take more rendezvous with the French newscast, which comes up at 8 p.m. with Leila Renganzo. Tomorrow we will be back at 6 p.m. Good night.